welcome to BCC Virtual Racing and tonight's race hosted by GGCC, Sand and Sequoias, with 3 seconds to go until the start. And that is now Category A underway. And this is a 22.5 kilometre race, 181 metres of climbing, and as is typical with the GGCC races, different categories starting at 1 minute intervals. So sitting on Scott Rowland at the moment in Category B, so I can capture them going off in a few seconds or so. So the race is really split into two halves. The Fuego Flats, which is through the desert, a well-known course, and into Titans Grove for the Sequoias part of the route. Quite hilly, well, nothing particularly big in terms of mountains. I think the KOM's, let's have a look, 2.6 kilometres, 2.5%, something like that. But it's a roller coaster of a ride, up and down, all over the place, twisty and turny, so it's quite a difficult one to maintain momentum on. So that will be interesting to see how the riders manage to cope with that particular course. It's one that's used fairly often, and here we have Cat B underway, and just stay on Scott Rowland for the moment, 405 watts there. A reasonable field in Cat B, 8 riders, but the strength from BCC tonight is in Category C with 12 riders, and a good showing from Cat B with 4 riders, and there they are, riders onto the course. This bridge just in front of them will become familiar as they head towards the finish. There's a short lead in on this particular route of about 1.5k. So there is Rowland underway, and there's Beaver up ahead in front of him in 16th place at the moment. And in the field, quite a number of riders to look out for today. Booth representing the ladies from BCC. Davis, of course. No Lancia. So Lancia must be careful about falling behind. Of course, the one way that Davis does so well is by turning up for every race, or just about, unless he has a technical problem, like he did the other week. And sorry, no broadcast from me over the past couple of weeks. Been on holiday in Mallorca, where in fact I did bump into one of the riders on course there, Empson. And all I can say is after that encounter, I'm glad he wasn't racing the next day, because I don't think he would have made it. Anyway, Beaver on screen now, 0.8 kilometres in, and at 22k, this is a quick route no matter which way you look at it. And the aforementioned Davis, there he is. Now, we'll try and get Cat C as they're about to start. I can't see a timer for them, but they should be underway shortly. Excuse the dog in the background. And there we are, Category C now underway. Nixon up front. In fact, Smith, Jamie Smith, is fact. Oh, this looks unusual. He's doing something very different here. Has decided in the first 0.6 of a kilometre to leave the rest of the field behind. Now that is a very difficult position to be in. I'm sure he's ridden this course before, but it's easy here in time trial mode. But a little bit more difficult later. Let's see if he manages to hold what is quite a remarkable pace at 280 watts, 173 beats per minute, and that's getting close to his maximum. And is the gap, let's see, at the moment till rider 2 is 4 seconds. Next nearest BCC rider, Alan Nixon, 4 seconds behind. Will he maintain that? Be interesting to see, I think. We'll come back to him, and I don't think Cat D will have started yet. Well, there's Peter Jones, as I'm sure I've mentioned in the past. Always worth mentioning or recognising his efforts on the road or in the circuit racing, current national champion in his age group. Not on Zwift, I mean physically, out there on a bicycle, so he knows exactly what he's doing. And a rider I haven't followed before, Chandler from BCC, currently towards the rear of the field. But he's got a reasonable looking bike there, so maybe saving himself for a little bit later on. We'll see what happens. Tom Hall And in fact, look at category C. It's spread a long way out. Right next to him is Albert May, Richard Hindley. Just ahead of them, Matt Civita. And then still Nixon and Smith, in fact, seems to be... Well, he's pulling away from Nixon. He's still holding ground from rider G behind him. In fact, G is catching up just ever so slightly. And that's the first category A rider that Smith's just gone flying past. There might be a problem there. But the gap now to look at is between Smith, the first of Cat C, and Booth at the rear of category B. There's a 51-second gap at the moment, but don't forget these riders started at 1 minute intervals. So Empson by himself. Little unusual. In fact, he is near the rear of the field with Booth just 10 seconds, 7 seconds now behind him. We'll leave him there for the moment at 3.1 kilometres and see what's happening up the front of this. There's Thompson, one of the hosts from GGCC. And Chris Brackey, I expect a good performance from him, sitting right next to Davis and Rowland at 3.5 kilometres, 5 minutes in. And this still obviously the Fuego Flats, the sand part of the course in the desert. And no category A riders this evening, which is a little unusual. Let's just see. So that is, so just having a quick look in Cat A. No one that I know of in Cat A. This is the first of all of the Cat B riders. Oliver, some 6 seconds ahead of the next rider and some 14 seconds ahead of the first BCC rider, which is Scott Rowland at the moment, who is pulling slightly away from Davis. Rowland at 268, 290 watts, something around there. Davis similar actually, and it's not really fair to say there's a gap forming. It's just Rowland is just ahead. Brackey sitting right next to him. Beaver beginning to lose touch with the peloton, and this is where it gets difficult for these riders. As you can see in the moving map, it is flat, the course. So this is all about consistent power, and Wales behind Beaver, and he is beginning to drift off the back as well. So the Cat B, not unusual at this stage. Riders have to watch the tactics carefully. Are they going to push it hard on the flat to gain some advantage before the hillier section arrives, or do they fancy themselves in the hills? The finish on this, the KOM comes in at the top of the KM, is roughly 2/3 of the way into the course. Then it's downhill with one kick before coming back to the finish, and the finish back on the flat part of the Sand and Sequoias course, the Fuego Flats. So Martin Wales now at 5.2 kilometres, so already a quarter of the way around this course in 7 minutes. Will get slower, of course, on the hillier section. And let's see, Empson 24 seconds behind Beaver. That's not what I would expect to see. I think he needs to make a bit more effort in there. But he has been on holiday, so he may be forgiven for that. Booth, the gap to Booth, 16 seconds. Now, it will be interesting to see what happens there. Moving into Cat C now. So we have, as far as I can tell, the first rider, McCarthy. Don't know that rider, but from BCC, aha, now we're all changed. Nixon has moved into the front. 7 minutes 29 at 5k. Smith is now 5 seconds behind Nixon. So that's been a major change. So clearly Smith has just gone too early, too fast, too soon, blown it. Wattage occasionally peaks up to what it was. Heart rate's still up there, but the power is coming off at 3 watts, 2.7 to 3 watts per kilo. So that's how you don't start a race. In this particular case, at least, Nixon, a more experienced racer, was 4 seconds behind Smith, now 7 seconds ahead, and the gap is increasing. Let's just have a look at Smith's output. So 270, 260, 230, 240, let's say around 240 average. And Smith has now been overtaken by Civita, another very experienced rider. That's Civita just moving past now. In fact, Smith's power is continuing to drop off. And closing in on him, here's a man that knows exactly what he's doing within his own abilities, or knows them very well. Albert May, holding 211 watts, 159 on the heart, which is good for him. And behind him, though, much younger competitor, Tom Hall, and he is some 9 seconds behind May. So May, if you take it on a relative basis, age for age, is doing exceptionally well. And towards the rear now, Chandler, still towards the back of the field. But behind him, Peter Jones. And I haven't yet seen Shannon. Here he is. Now, I would expect him to be further up the field. He is very experienced, though, so he may be saving something for the hills. Right next to him is Measham. And at the moment, as far as I can tell from BCC, Stoneham Senior, Marcus, is at 5.6 kilometres, 9 minutes into this race. And the riders will be entering the Sequoias part of the course, Titans Grove, where I expect to see some changes. So let's just go back through the Cat's Fat. What I haven't seen is Cat D yet, and we're certainly underway. Let's just have a look, see if I can find them. And there's Lord. Oh no, it's Telford, beg your pardon. Telford is leading Lord by some 19 seconds. Further 14 back is Slipper. And there was one other rider, but I've forgotten who it is. Oh, Poulter, there he is. So Poulter is leading Cat D, but right next to Telford, so it's going to swap back and forward at this stage. 19 seconds ahead of Lord and 35 seconds ahead of Slipper, who brings up the rear of the field. Typically in the GGCC races, and certainly in the multi-lap ones, Cat D will ride 1 lap less, but not really possible in a 22-kilometre race of this nature. Now, let's move quickly up to the front, because I expect these riders are coming into the hills, or the undulating section of the course. And let's have a look. In fact, they are just about to get there, so I will stay with the front of the field. Looks like Roland is now pulling away from Davis. Roland at 8.8 kilometres. Davis indicates 8.8. So we have Roland. In fact, let's have a view from Davis. So Davis can see just ahead of him Chris Brackey and Scott Rowland. Those are the two riders immediately in front of him. And then Matt Beaver gets this view of Davis, Brackey and Rowland going around the corner before him. He's going to have to work fairly hard to get on the back of that. And Wales has got an even more distant view. He probably can't quite see Rowland and Brackey up the front. They will pop up at his screen, but the display only holds about 6 riders ahead, so he should be able to see them. But here we are now. Once the riders get to this roundabout, they make a right-hand turn. and start to head into the hillier section of the course at 9 kilometers in. So it's a roughly 50-50 on the flats compared to the hills. So Bracky and Roland together now. Davis still 2 seconds back. Beaver a further 5 seconds back. Let's have a look back. That is Bracky sitting right behind Roland. And then 2 riders further back behind the green rider on screen now is Davis. And then that will be Beaver, 2 other riders further back. Now we start to climb. 3% this first climb. Climb's the wrong word, I should say. It's just a change of elevation. But it's harder than it looks, particularly at race speed. And this section of the course is not only undulating, it's a tight, twisty turns. So roller coaster is a good description for it, which, although virtual, does break the rhythm a little bit. So riders do need to focus on what they're doing and think about what's coming up. I just saw myself on screen there looking a bit orange for some reason, but there you go. Now, what's happening on the hill? Well, Davis is caught up. So Davis, of course, knows what he's doing. Over 400 races on Zwift now. In fact, he is, go back, I suspect he will sit behind Roland and Bracky just for a moment or two, gather a bit of energy before the next undulation comes in. This is just getting up to the top of this short climb very shortly. And then it goes back down and starts to undulate before coming up to the KOM. As you can see here on screen at 4%. So these are the first of the riders now in the undulating section of the course. Matt Beaver, 10.9 kilometers, 16 minutes in. Still being chased down by Wales, who's up out of the saddle and pushing, doesn't want to let Beaver go. 4.3 watts per kilo. But Beaver's pushing 4.7, at least he was when I said that, but the gap's closed slightly. Wales is trying again. Yes, he's taking advantage, or he's trying to kick on those slight uphills, take advantage on the downhills. This is draining, this type of riding. Not really enough of a chance to recover on the little downhill or flat sections before another uphill bit comes. Now, is Wales going to try? No, it doesn't look like it. The gap is now widening. No, he's up out of the saddle once more. But then so is Beaver. He's going to have to kick a bit harder than that to catch up. Sandy Thompson from GGCC, further 16 seconds back. And let's have a look at the rest of the riders. Empson, about 42 seconds behind Roland at this stage. And it looks as if Empson is the last of the BCC B riders that I could see. But in Cat C, it seems to have changed again. This is where the action seems to be happening. And Richard Hindley's now moved up to first place. Nixon is 16 seconds off. And I can see Tamsin Booth is Cat B is at 8 seconds behind Richard Hindley, but she is in category B, of course. So Hindley up front at 11k, 16 minutes, coming up for 17 minutes, has overtaken Civita and Nixon, who are together. They in turn blasted Smith off the course. In fact, Smith is in trouble here, if you ask me. Power is going down. It's been going down fairly consistently. Heartbeat's still up there, so he's trying, but it doesn't look as if his legs have got it. He's now let's see if we can work it out, about 45 seconds off the front of this pack. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this rider, Albert May, very experienced, knows exactly what he's doing. Knowing him, has probably calculated the exact number of watts he needs to ride at every point of this course and in which gear. But for him, it works very well. And just to prove the point, the gap to him and Smith has been closing. So Smith needs to think about his strategy right now, because he's not going to survive at this pace. And behind him, Tom Hall, 16 seconds further back. And for BCC, we have Paul Chandler, Peter Jones, Mark Shannon. Not performing where I'd expect him to be. Certainly expect to see him ahead of Jones and Chandler, but maybe he missed the start a bit, getting into that TT position. Not sure what's going on there. Be worth an investigation later. Maybe he had a mechanical. Who knows? And 8 seconds behind him is Measham. Is it Measham? Yes, it is Measham. And then behind Measham, Stoneham. Now, I know Stoneham is much quicker than this, but of course, to maintain that speed, you have to be riding regularly, as he well knows, and I haven't seen him ride too often recently. In Cat D, Poulter still leads Telford by 9 seconds, who in turn is 3 seconds ahead of Lord. And Matt Slipper is drifting right off the back now, about 1 minute 15 behind Lord. Right, let's get back up towards the front. If I see anything interesting happening on the way back up the field, I will stop. Let's just have a quick check of May. So May has gained 2 seconds on Smith. In fact, that will be Smith just going past our screens now, I think. No, that's not him. No, just going around the corner. There's Smith looking back. That's May, the third rider there, chasing him down. Now down to 3 seconds. Nixon. Oh, Nixon's now. What's going on here? Oh, that's okay. Yep, Nixon at 12.8. Civitar up ahead. And still in the front position, Hindley. Right, Cat B. Empson. Where is he? 13.6 kilometres. 21 minutes into this race. Wales 14.2. Beaver 14.3 kilometres. Front of the field. Davis is where he wants to be. Is now, as far as I know, leading the entire BCC field. Certainly fifth in category B, as you can probably see in your screens. He's alongside Brackey and Roland, who's just tucked in behind the two of them. At 14.6 kilometres and 22 minutes. And this is just coming up to the top of the KOM. Might not be able to see the profile on your screens. It's always quite small, but as they get to the top, there's a downhill section, but there is still one more bump to go. So depending on how the riders tackle this particular section, they could gain a real advantage. It's not the time to relax downhill here. In fact, Davis and Brackey are trying to prove the point, trying to break away from Roland. Roland is dropped off by 2 seconds, holding 320, 340 watts, or more appropriately 4.7 watts per kilo. Davis is pushing it up to 5.5. Brackey is slightly less, and that's beginning to show in a slight gap has formed. There's the KOM. Brackey's up out of the saddle again. Here comes the downhill. Let's see what Davis decides to do. Not really steep enough or long enough for a super tuck. But is he pushing on? Well, his heartbeat's up there for an old boy. That's not at all bad. He's not pulling away from Brackey, who's sitting right behind him. But Roland is going to lose sight of them round this corner, and he just about does, but he is now 4 seconds behind Davis. Brackey is, as you can see, Swift reports 1 second gap. Well, now it's a 0 second gap, but right there. And 20 seconds further back, Matt Beaver has 2 other riders around him, but is pushing hard to get away from them. I'm not sure if that's... Well, he's been watching those 2 riders around him for some time. Not normally an effective strategy. It's a huge commitment to try and manage a breakaway from there. But if he can do it, it will be quite impressive. He's not going to catch up with the other 3 ahead of him. So I don't think at this stage it's going to impact his position. About 6 kilometres left. So I think we've got a chance for one more look at Cat C and the rest of the field. Martin Wales at 16.1k in 24 minutes. Our host Sandy Thompson 16.2. Empson about 1.5 minutes behind Davis and Co. at 15.3 kilometres. And then we move very quickly into Cat C. So the gap between the front of Cat C and let's say Empson, for example, who's towards the rear of the field for Cat B. If I can work it out, if Swift would stop jumping all over the place. It's about 1 minute 20 seconds. So Hindley and Civitar. In fact, Civitar is now pulling away from Hindley and has, as soon as I started to say that, a 1 second gap, has just gone over the KOM himself and is taking advantage of that. Now a 2 second gap. Tamsin further 51 seconds back, riding by herself. Not much choice there, unfortunately. Nixon, who was up the front for a while, is, let's see, 4 seconds behind Booth, and he should be able to see her. That's her just going around the corner. And then Smith a further 48 seconds back. Yes, brave move from him. Brave move, but there, as predicted, May has caught him up. Now May, I suspect, will sit there for some time. Take advantage, but only if he thinks Smith isn't slowing him down. But at the moment he's content, and Shannon is 10 seconds further back. Now Shannon is closing that gap, and I would expect him to. Chandler 9 seconds further back with Tom Hall sitting on his tail. Measham and Jones, a pair of them, and an additional 10 seconds further back. And Stoneham 34 seconds further back. So putting out a reasonable power, but doesn't have it this evening by the looks of it. And I suspect that's just a bit of fitness more than anything else. And in the D's, Poulter still well ahead, followed by Lord. And Lord, in fact, has overtaken Telford and has put a gap in there of 4 seconds, with Slipper 1 minute 44 behind. Right, let's go up to the very front of the field because this race is getting close to the end. I expect to see Davis up the front when I get there. There's Empson on the way past. There is Davis at 19 kilometres. So I will stay with the front runners now. These races tend to finish very quickly and it's easy to miss them. So, what's happened? In fact, Brackey has pulled ahead of Davis. Only just on this downhill section. Let's see what it looks like from Davis's point of view. There is Davis with Brackey 2 riders ahead, not the one immediately in front of him. Scott Rowland's having another go at it, though. That gap between him and Davis and Brackey has closed by a second. They're now 3 seconds ahead, or Davis is 3 seconds ahead. Now, it's looking promising for Brackey. Davis certainly won't be giving up yet, but I'm not sure if he's got to catch Chris up ahead of him. Chris has got a good strong finish. Beaver, a further 19 seconds back. And has he stayed with anyone else? No, he has continued to push ahead to try and create a gap between himself and these riders behind. And at the moment, not a big gap, but he is succeeding. He might just break them in doing that. But the gap up front, 19 seconds. And here we are back on the Fuego Flats. Going to go under this bridge, which the riders went under at the start of the race, with the lead-in section from the start pens. And this will be a familiar finish for them, about 2.5k now. This is a fast part of the course. The next sort of milestone is one of the little loops that they will pass. And they're looking for the finishing arch in about a kilometre, 1.9k, something of that nature. And they will all know exactly where that is. So Davis and Brackey right together again. So Davis is not giving up, which is what I'd expect, but I'm still, this evening, have my money on the rider just in front of him. Now at 20.5 kilometres, 29 minutes, 50 seconds. They're not going to finish this within 30 minutes, but it's going to be pretty close to it. And Davis is not taking advantage of the slipstream. He's determined to push past. And he's done just that. Is Brackey going to respond? Let's have a look. His power is, I'm looking at watts per kilo now. Like for like, he is responding. He is giving it a go. Davis has seen that though and responds himself. Brackey has another go up to 6 watts per kilo. He's determined to hold on. But Davis is equally determined to pull away. So at the moment, Davis with no time difference indicated, but about 3 bike lengths ahead. Roland, on the other hand, currently in 3rd place. Can't see them, or might be able to see them on the straight. In fact, just going around the left-hand corner up ahead, that was the 2 BCC riders ahead of him, who are now 5 seconds away. And Beaver has, what's he done? Now the gap between the front and Beaver has gone up from about 16 to 23 seconds. And I'll just go back up to the front again, as we're not far from the finish. Just looking for it on screen or on the course map. I'll probably recognise it on screen. So Brackey slightly, in fact his gap has now gone down to 2 seconds. That is Davis immediately ahead of him. Big left hand bend here. Not far to the finish at all. And Davis will probably begin to wind it up a bit shortly. I think that's the arch coming into view now. Should be, if I remember correctly. What's Davis doing here? Davis 5.96 watts per kilo. And that is Davis crossing the finish line, then followed by Brackey. Scott Rowland will be the 3rd rider, just about to cross the line now. There he goes, and we'll move to Matt Beaver. He's coming up to the finish in about 32.50. Next rider that we know, always good to recognise the host, Sandy Thompson. And next of the BCC riders will be Martin Wales. Finish line in view. No one really pushing hard for the finish, but no need in this particular case. There's I don't think anyone behind him. No, no one behind him. And there he now crosses the finish line. And I'll just try and get... And there's Empson, I think, is the next Cat B rider. at least the next that I have left that I can see. 21.7k. Little bit to go yet. Round this right hand bend, then a left, and the finish will come into view past this ruin on the right and the temple ahead. And no one near Empson, so I'll let him cross the finish line. But into the bulk of the field, or the largest of the field. So it's Civitar has pulled away from Hindley while we've been looking at Cat B by some 9 seconds at the moment. So quite a performance from him. But again, an experienced racer, both on Zwift and out on the road sometimes. So certainly cyclocross. So he knows what he's doing. And that gap is closing rather rapidly though. 7 seconds now. Hindley's certainly not given up on Civitar. You can see him just ahead, down to 6 seconds. He's left it a bit late for a big push. A little bit more and he might just make that, but I think it's going to be too far. In fact, we could see Civitar will have the finish line. There it is in sight, but a good final push from Hindley there. But Civitar needs to be a little careful though. But he's going to cross that finish line before Hindley gets a chance. And maybe not. Look at this for a late break. 4 seconds. He's not going to make it, but that was a great try from Hindley. And there's Civitar crossing the line. Next in Cat C, I should say. Well, actually, let's have a look at Tamsin. She's the first of the ladies in Cat B. She'll be coming up to the finish line in about half a kilometre, but behind her, after Civitar and Hindley, we have Nixon in category C, who is 15 seconds behind Booth. And we'll just come back to her, watch her cross the finish line. No other riders close to her from BCC or anyone else for that matter. And we'll leave her here and go to Nixon, who's coming up to the finish line himself now. And following him, now this is interesting. So here we go. So there we have Smith, the initial leader of this field by quite some margin. Then it became Nixon, then Hindley, and Civitar overtook. And then, as I suggested earlier, Shannon has in fact caught up with Smith. That's going to be a bit of a battle to the end. I'm disappointed to see he hasn't kept up with Smith. I thought he might, but he's now drifted 5 seconds further back. But we'll watch these two riders. Smith being the much younger rider, although tired and clearly a strategy that didn't work very well for him. He may just have enough of a kick to get past Shannon. The younger legs are usually capable of that. So I'll sit with these two riders now until the finish. The finish is about to come into view. Mustn't get distracted by this other rider, but Shannon is pulling ahead. Smith has not responded yet, 4 watts per kilo. Shannon's holding it at 3.7, 3.8. In fact, Smith's up out of the saddle early. Shannon hasn't noticed. Smith's going to go straight past Shannon. Shannon notices too late, though. He's not going to catch him in this short space of time, I don't think. Smith goes up 6.8 watts per kilo. Shannon's realised he's beaten and lets it wind down at 2 watts per kilo. So he wasn't watching there. He could have stayed ahead of him, but the younger legs of Smith have carried him through to beating Shannon there. In category C, further back, Chandler has moved up the field a little bit, but he's responding to this other rider, which is always nice to see. We like a good fight. And he's going to come in about 37.5 minutes. And behind him, 7 seconds further back, we have Measham and Jones. Now, is Jones... Oh no, I got that wrong. That's Zwift not reporting it the right way. So it's Measham. And then we have, there it is, Jones coming into the finish, followed by Tom Hall. And then Marcus Stoneham has moved up the field. Closed some of those gaps slightly, but is still going to finish towards the rear of Cat C. And then the only riders we have left on the field now from BCC are in category D. And we still have Poulter out front, 12 seconds ahead of Telford. Now something odd's going on here, as Lord was a few seconds ahead of Telford last time I looked, and now she's 1 minute 53 behind, with Slipper 2 minutes 32 behind. That might just have been the way that Zwift was reporting. I don't expect these riders to change positions now, not at this late stage. So it looks as if, well, it's possible that Telford could catch up with Poulter. 19.6 kilometres. In fact, the gap to Telford is widening. So for tonight, I will leave it there. So it's Poulter leading the Ds, followed by Poulter leading the Ds, followed by Telford, then Lord, then Matt Slipper. So thank you all for watching. Next race on Thursday night at Beaconsfield Cricket Club. See you all then. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do the thumbs up, whatever else it is YouTube influencers do. See you there.